let's now switch to your defensive time that you had in the military. Tell us a little bit about that, what that experience was like.
Yeah, so I went in enlisted. I had a college degree. I could have gone on as an officer, but the fastest pathway in the United States Army to get into a special operations unit was the enlisted pathway. If I went in as an officer, it was going to be a lot more time in the schoolhouse. I wasn't sure if I wanted to make the military a career. Um, and I also at the time, that's quaint to think about, is I didn't know how long the war was going to last. And so, previously deployments for, we hadn't, the United States, hadn't, the last war, quote unquote, that the United States had fought, that was an actual, not a low level conflict, was, the first Gulf War. And that was more or less over in, 60 days. So I was in a hurry to find my way, into the fight, so to speak. And so I joined with a Ranger contract and completed all of the selection and everything to serve in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Specifically, I served at Second Ranger Battalion. That's up at Fort Lewis, Washington. And so yeah, I went from business school to I was a member of the Ranger machine gun teams. And the way the Ranger Regiment is organized, it's organized the same way as essentially any light airborne infantry unit in the U.S. military is. So it's a similar organizational structure. And regardless of whether you're in a special operations unit or not, there's certain military principles that always apply. And you can't project offensively if you do not have secure perimeter. So in Army or Ranger speak, one of a word picture, if you want to talk about that, if you have a platoon of folks walking around in the woods, and you stop and you're gonna sleep, etc. The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna form what's called a patrol base, and that's gonna be a triangle. It's a perimeter. Machine guns are on every corner. You're gonna make sure you have overlapping fields of fire. You're gonna make sure that you've got proper distance between the perimeter, and then you revert to your priorities of work. And that's always like, that's one of the most fundamental things in the Army anyway, is your priorities of work, which are always, it's basically the things that you have to do that nobody should tell you to have to do, right? It's almost like a part of your general orders. And that is always first and foremost, it's security, period. Establish security. Even if it's just you and one other guy, the first thing you do is somebody is on security. And then it's weapons maintenance, right? If you can't fight, if your weapons don't work, that's a problem. Then it's take care of yourself. And then at the very bottom of the list is sleep. And so those are your priorities of work that you're sort of always, you're always tied into. But yeah, it definitely crystallizes in a very visceral way, the balance between doing something that is inherently risky. If you're doing a raid or if you're going out on patrol, you are taking risk. And it is less risk to stay inside the wire than it is to go outside and try and knock down somebody's door. But how do you reduce exposure? How do you operate as smartly and as safely as possible so that taking that risk, you reduce as many variables as possible? Because I think that's the other thing that this is true in life, but it's certainly true in business. It's very much true in military operations, is that the enemy gets a vote, meaning the process you go through to plan for an operation, the value in that isn't so much you have a perfect, tailor-made, flawless plan. That plan is going to be subverted in some way, shape, or form. You're going to get there, and what you thought was on target isn't on target, or an airplane's going to break, or something's going to happen. And so if that quote something is going to happen is just baked into the expectation, then the planning value is primarily about the process.